We've got a charged atmosphere for two rivals in the East Division. It's the Moonshine Throwdown. Marshall and Western Kentucky.
Intercepted by Key, and Key has one man to beat. A nice cut move. Edwards can't get him. Key takes it all the way. A pick six for Devin Key.
Here comes Talik Keaton to the sideline midfield. He's to the 40, gets a block, and here's goal! Touchdown, Marshall!
So please join me in welcoming the 21st head coach in WKU football history, Tyson Helton.
And Marshall's going to finish the year 9-4 and champions of the 2018 Gasparilla Bowl, the sixth consecutive bowl win for the Marshall Thundering Herd.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Another week in the books, a 1-1 weekend. I guess the picture is starting to come a little bit more clear in this Conference USA East Division race. So before we dive into these wrap-ups, find the podcast on Twitter at MSTD_podcast. Find the main rivalry account at Moonshine TD, which if you're not following by now, you're really, really missing out. Of course, find the podcast on most major podcast platforms. And if you would, take the time to subscribe to the show, rate it, and leave a review on iTunes or anywhere else you're able to rate and review the show. It really helps us get noticed and get found a little bit more easily. So we really appreciate that. But we're going to start this week with the Herd. The Herd is currently, now in first place. I'm going to say all by their lonesome. They are now tied record-wise with FAU, but the Herd owns the tiebreaker with FAU. So the Herd's in first place all alone, Trace. I don't care what anybody says. They were playing lowly and forever Rice in a game that could have been a really big trap game for the Herd, coming off of that emotional victory against Western Kentucky the weekend before. And looking forward a little bit maybe to Louisiana Tech after a bye week this coming week. So this had all the makings to be a big letdown for the Herd, playing in the state of Texas, playing a team that had nothing to lose and yada, yada, yada. The Herd did take care of business, not really in the fashion that we would have liked to have seen them take care of business, but they still came out with a win, relatively unscathed as far as I've heard injury-wise. So, there's not too much to complain about. The Herd gets a 20-7 victory over Rice. I mean, the game really wasn't in question, even though Rice actually led at one point 7-3, but it was short-lived. The Herd got the ball back, went right back down the field and scored and took the lead and never gave it back up. But still, not the dominating performance we had hoped we would see, but it's still a win, and Marshall still keeps pace in the win column and moves into first place all alone in the Conference USA East, gains bowl eligibility. So some positives there. Let's talk about those four indicators. This game was all Herd, really. They outgained Rice 391 to 231. They outpossessed Rice in time of possession, 33 minutes, 8 seconds to 26 minutes, 52 seconds. And they have more first downs, 18 to 16. Neither team turned the ball over. So this game played out like you would expect it to play out. The Herd swept the four categories, actually 3 out of 4. With that fourth one, the turnovers being a push, and they get a 20-7 victory. The big thing that sticks out to me, Trace, and I know you're going to talk about this, is second half, once again, only 3 points scored and none in the fourth quarter. The Herd just cannot continue to do this week in and week out and expect to win against a team like Louisiana Tech here in a couple of weeks. I mean, they're going to have to put it all together and stay on the gas for 60 minutes or 30 minutes or however long they possess the daggone ball. They're going to have to stay with the gas and put up some freaking points. You're not going to be able to live and die by first half scoring and shutting it down essentially in the second half. So before we talk about stats, let's talk about Rice. I know you watched the game. Why wouldn't you? Even though you said pre-show it was Halloween was being celebrated there last Saturday for the Herd. Well, not for the Herd, for in Huntington or Hurricane or wherever you were. So your day was cut a little bit short because of that. But still, let's talk about Rice and the Herd.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this game went very much like I thought it would. Now, the score that I picked was 30-17, but as far as the margin of victory, I nailed it. I mean, not to toot my own horn, because I don't like doing that, but yeah, I mean, it's just a little lower scoring version of what I said. And like honestly, like I was one of the ones that didn't think it would be a big blowout, because like I was one that thought, a lot of people were saying this on Twitter and stuff, that Rice was better than the record said, and I really think they are. I mean, I don't think they are nearly. I mean, if you watch them, like I don't really understand how that team hasn't won a game. I mean, they've got some players. I mean, they're not exactly a world beater team or anything, you know, but they don't. To me, like even though they were 2-10 last year, I think this team's better than what they were last year. But yet they haven't won yet. It's really weird. So, like, I honestly think the next couple of years, Rice is going to be a team that's in a bowl game. I really believe that. I think they're going to right the ship. I really think so. So we'll see how that goes in the future. But as far as Marshall in this one, I mean, it was pretty much business as usual. You know, it wasn't going to, I never thought it was going to be one of those 40-point wins or whatever. It would have been nice to have seen that. But, like, on the road all the way out there in Texas, I mean, Marshall, like I said on the last episode, was only 1-11 in the state of Texas in the last 15 years. So it takes a lot for the Marshall to win a game in Texas, and they won the game. I mean, yeah, and even though Rice technically led, I think that was in the second quarter, early second quarter, I think it was, but it lasted like a minute. Like Marshall went down, I think it was like a 2-play drive after Rice went up 7-3. So then Marshall led basically the whole game. There was, even when Rice led 7-3, I never thought that Marshall was in danger of losing. I've always thought they were in control the whole game. But you would, of course, you're going to have to start seeing more points in the second half and the third quarter. I mean, my God, that's got to happen. I mean, I can understand a little bit more in this game because, like, they didn't have to put up a bunch of points in the second half. But against, like, Louisiana Tech, and if, you know, dare I say, if they get to the conference title game, they're not going to be able to win a game scoring 3 points in the second half. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to have to figure that out, especially coming up. I mean, they have a week to prepare, an extra week to prepare for La Tech, and what a lot of people are saying could be a conference title game preview, you know, with the top 2 teams in the divisions right now. So we'll see how that goes. You know, playing Crash Anniversary game, blackout, it's going to be a pretty big deal Friday night. But as far as this game, yeah, it was kind of just what I expected. Would have liked to have seen some more points. You know, I mean, they moved the ball well, and, like, they did some good things, but, like, you would have liked to see some more points in that. But, like, the only thing that I can complain about in this game is just the fact that they only scored 20 and that the margin of victory wasn't overly, you know, a lot. So, I mean, if that's all you have to complain about, the margin of victory, then you did a pretty decent job, I think. So it was a good win. I mean, any win on the road is a good win, especially if it's on the road in Texas, like Marshall's history with Texas. So good win. They needed it, bowl eligible. So it's a good start for these last 3 games.
Yeah. I mean, this was finally actually a warm up essentially to maybe see what you could do or try something new and, you know, not have to worry about it blowing up in your face too badly. I mean, the Herd gets the win. What else can you say? You know, one other note, of course, we'll talk about this when we preview Louisiana Tech next week, but yeah, I'm one of those folks that think this is a potential Conference USA championship game matchup. And what hasn't been said that will be said, well, obviously I'm getting ready to say it. This is a game that could decide who hosts the Conference USA championship game.
Sure could.
Yeah, this is a big one for the Herd. So this puts more emphasis on the fact that points are going to be at a premium for Marshall. 20 points is not going to beat Louisiana Tech. I can't imagine. 28 points I don't think is going to beat Louisiana Tech. So, you know, they're going to have to really come out and maybe put out their best offensive performance of the season and have it actually translate to points, not just yards. But let's talk about stats for this Rice game before we talk too much about Louisiana Tech. We got 2 weeks until that one comes up. Isaiah Green, 17 out of 22, 269 yards, 1 touchdown, QBR 83.7. Pretty good game for Isaiah Green. I think going in, he was my 200 proof player. You know, he didn't have as gaudy of a stats as I would have liked to have seen him had against a 0-8 team, but hey, 17 out of 22, just 5 incompletions. That's a pretty darn good game for Isaiah Green. QBR 83.7. You can't complain about that. How about Brendan Knox? 27 carries, very workhorse type day, 130 yards and 1 touchdown. Good for 4.8 yards per carry. Brendan Knox, I saw a stat, is fifth in the country over the last 10 or 11 games in rushing,
Yeah.
and he's behind a real who's who of college football along that stretch. So pretty phenomenal what you're seeing Brendan Knox do. It just gets overlooked a little bit because it's been over the course of the latter half of one season and, up to this point now. Armani Levias, 7 catches, 96 yards, leads the way for the herd in yardage through the air. Xavier Gaines, 2 catches for 74 yards. Talik Keaton, just 2 catches for 23 yards, but he did get his first career receiving touchdown. A really nice play, nice toss from Isaiah Green, good catch from Talik Keaton as well. Defensively, a couple of guys sharing the load. Najee Johnson, Tavante Beckett, both 9 tackles apiece. Johnson, 3 of those solo and 1 pass defended. Beckett, just 2 tackles of his were solo. Sacks, Rice did a good job of keeping the herd off of their QB. Only 3 sacks this week. That's down from a pretty gaudy run for the herd over the past 2 or 3 games. So sacks by 3 different guys, too. Darius Hodge, Jamari Edwards, and Kobe Cumberlander each got 1. Justin Rowasser, 2 of 3 on field goals, 2 of 2 on extra points. He has his first, and it's not a miss. Rice blocked it. So bummer for Rowasser because he's still he's still perfect on kicks he gets up. He hasn't missed one, but it's a bummer that he had that one blocked. And it was the first one of the game. And, of course, the funny thing about that was, my timeline was blowing up from Western fans saying, of course, his first kick after the game winner is the one that gets blocked. So, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
You hate to see it.
You hate to see it. So let's cruise right on into grades for this week, and then, we'll move right along in this shortened episode, at least for your purposes. So let's talk about a quarterback grade for Isaiah Green this week against Rice.
Yeah, the more I watched him against Rice, the more I thought this is one of the best, absolutely one of the best games he played all year. And I think that this was maybe the first or at worst second best game he's played all year. So I'm going to give Isaiah Green an A. I thought he was really good in this game. First half, he was really on target. For a while, he only had 1 incompletion. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was accurate there early on, and he made some really nice throws. He made no mistakes, no turnovers, no self-destructing, mistakes. It was a really clean game. And most of his damage was done in the first half. He really didn't do much in the second half, but by that point, there not a whole lot needed to be done. But 17 of 22, that's extremely accurate for him. 269 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, no turnovers. 83.7 QBR, like you mentioned. I believe that's the second highest QBR he's had all year, behind the Ohio game. I was looking back at my notes for some of those games, and I'm pretty sure, if I can find it real quick, his QBR in the Ohio game was 85.4, so very close to that. So it was a really good game for Green. I really was impressed. So if he can keep playing like that, then Marshall can absolutely have a chance to win the East. So, but it's going to be it can't just be 1 week. He's going to have to keep playing like that, especially against La Tech. So I'm going to give Green an A.
Yeah, not a bad grade. The thing that sticks out to me the most is just those 5 incompletions. That's something that we don't really get to see a lot from Isaiah Green. He goes through stretches, or has gone through stretches this season in games just about every week where he's, he gets the shanks, and then it takes something, good, and he'll hit a big bomb, and then he'll warm up again. So really nice to see him play a complete game and be accurate with the football. How about offensively as a whole? just under 400 yards of offense, only gets 20 points though. How do you grade that?
Yeah, offense was pretty good. I'm going to say B. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't what you had hoped it would be as far as putting up an abundance of points. But it was a pretty good day. 20 points. Yeah, that's okay. That'll beat some teams in Conference USA, but it's not gonna win you a conference title, and it's not gonna beat these legit teams coming up that are gonna play like La Tech. But 391 total yards. That's a pretty good day. 269 passing. That's more than they have been getting through the air, I feel like. So, and 122 on the ground. That's pretty skewed because 2 or 3 guys had negative rushing yards, including sacks. So that kind of messes up how great of a game Brendan Knox had. He was absolutely great in this game. I mean, we're just a workhorse performance. I mean, you have to see him. I've been saying all year they need to give him 20, 25 carries a game, and he had that. He had over that. So I want to see that continue. I mean, because we know how good he can be, and he's like 70. I don't remember exactly what it is, like 70 some yards or around 70 yards short of 1,000, and he's got 3 games left, plus a bowl game and maybe a conference title. So he's going to easily eclipse 1,000 if he stays healthy. But offense also had 0 turnovers. But the first quarter, there were some red zone issues that I didn't like, and I tweeted immediately. First drive of the game, or what I think it was the first drive, they go down there, and then they end up getting the field goal block. They stall inside the 10. And then another time in the first quarter, they get inside the 10. They drive down the field at ease. They have to kick a field goal. So they really should have had, obviously, way more than 20 points if they would have. The red zone issues they can't have that. So that's got to be corrected. Not enough points. I mean, 20 points, I don't think that's enough. I mean, it was enough to win the game handily, but like you got to have more than that coming up. And then they won the time of possession by about 7 minutes. So you like to see that. And you like to see 8 of 16 on third down, because Marshall's at times this year really struggled on third down. So offense did some good things, but really the only thing holding the grade back is just the fact they only scored 20 points. So I'm going to say B.
Yeah, fair grade. I mean, 20 points is 20 points. It'll beat Rice. It'll beat Rice. It'll beat Old Dominion. It'll beat UTEP. But yeah, I mean, it might beat Florida International, but I don't know. I mean, you can't count on that. But it definitely will not beat Louisiana Tech, and it won't beat Charlotte. That's for sure. Charlotte can put up some points. That's a scary game that I wouldn't think I would have been saying at the beginning of the season, simply because that game's on the road and Charlotte can put up some points. So, we'll see how that one goes too. How about defensively? A pretty decent day for several guys. They didn't get after the quarterback like they had to, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of get the feeling that the game plan maybe this week was like, hey, let's not do anything that will get us exposed to a big play that, otherwise wouldn't happen. Something to keep Rice hanging around. Let's just play a base level game and see where it goes. That's kind of the feeling I get from it this week.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the defense was really solid overall. I'm going to say A-. Only giving up 7 points. I mean, that in itself is got to be high grade, and then it only gave up 231 total yards. That's really good. That's one of the lowest outputs. Well, that's one of the best outputs they've had against the opposing team's total yardage all season. And then they only gave up 3 of 12 on third down conversions to Rice. That was impressive. 0 of 3 on fourth down. They stopped them all 3 times on fourth down. I like that. And it's kind of, we're kind of joking about, or not joking, but we're kind of saying how 3 sacks isn't much compared to what they've been doing. But like 3 sacks is pretty good for most teams, game in and game out. And like, even though it's not what they had been doing, that's still pretty good. 3 sacks, 3 TFLs, 3 quarterback hurries. So they weren't exactly as dominant in that aspect as they had been, but that's still a solid day, I think. I mean, it was nothing to sneeze at. And, I mean, the only reason I gave it A- though is Rice had some success moving the ball at times, especially in the first half. That quarterback of theirs was pretty athletic. I thought he was a pretty good player. So, I mean, the defense kind of gave up a few too many yards there in the first half, I think. But really, other than that, they couldn't. I mean, they only gave up 7 points, so that's got to be high. They kind of some bend but don't break again. They kind of do that they kind of have that tendency a lot this year to have a lot of bend but don't break. I mean, they did bend a little bit in the first half, but they only gave up 7 points for the whole game. So I'm going to say A- for the defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I didn't mean that to sound like they didn't play well. I just meant like it didn't seem like they were, as willing to take any unnecessary chances at a big play, maybe to get that extra 4th sack or whatever. But no, this was a very good game all the way around. Definitely earns that A- grade. It just seemed like Rice was overmatched by this defense, and they didn't have to play that harder, very, very hard. You know what I mean? They had to play tough, but
they didn't need 8 sacks.
Yeah, I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
Special teams grade this week.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good game, but it wasn't overly exceptional. It wasn't great. So I'm going to say B for special teams. I mean, for the first time all year, Warwasser misses the field goal, but it was blocked, so it really wasn't on him. I hated to see that because I'm like, oh, crap, now his perfect season's over with as far as field goals. But I mean, he bounced right back and made 2. and he made one from like nearly 50 yards. So he's really adept to making those long kicks now. You like to see that because last year and a lot of times this year, he really never got a chance to show that he had that kind of leg strength. So that's impressive in its own right there. Good kick coverage. I was happy with that. Rice only had one kick return the whole game according to the stats that ESPN had on there. So that was good. They really took advantage of the wind and they played the wind really well, took advantage with them touchbacks and stuff. So that's nice to see. I mean, what better way to stop the kick returner than kicking out of the end zone? So that was good there. Punting was a little bit iffy just based on the numbers. I mean, 37 yards for punts, not that impressive. But at the same time, I don't really remember anything that Lefevre did that was bad punting. I mean, the numbers are a little bit lower than he's used to punting per averages this year, but it really wasn't anything that I can say definitively was bad. Like, usually you can remember like a bad punt or a shank or a whatever, but I don't really remember anything bad. It was just the numbers were a little lower. I mean, it probably was just based on the situation that they were in or whatever. So special teams were pretty good. It wasn't anything that you need to pound your chest about, but it certainly wasn't anything bad. So I'm going to say B.
Yeah, I was waiting on you to talk about kick coverage, and only having one for 15 yards for Rice is pretty good.
Good.
They also swallowed up punts. I think Rice had 2 for 4 total yards. I mean, that's you got to love that. And you're right, Lefevre, for all we know, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a photographic memory, but, Marshall was living around midfield basically all day long. I don't recall that many drives that they didn't at least get close to the 50, if not cross it. So, 37-yard average on punts, and when you're hovering around the 50 is pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, good, solid effort. I wish that one kick wouldn't have gotten blocked either. I'd like to see Rohrwasser stay perfect on the year, but hey, those things happen. How about the coaching effort this week?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid. I'm going to say B+. First things first, I mean, they had him ready to play. With all the situations that we talked about, the fact that they had just won an emotional, huge home game the week before in a rivalry situation. They won on a walk-off field goal that could lend itself to a letdown on the road at an 0-18 in Texas. That could lend itself to a big emotional letdown, but that wasn't the case. They had them ready to play. I mean, they didn't play the sharpest at times in the first half, at least first quarter, but they had them ready to play. It wasn't an issue about that. And there was no big win hangover that we said it could have happened. So I'm glad they avoided that. But at the end of the day, they just didn't do enough in the second half for me. I mean, it was a solid. I mean, the coaching did good overall, but you gotta, in my opinion, you gotta do more than 3 points in the second half. I mean, enough. They didn't have to have that much more in the second half because of who they were playing, but in the future, that's like we keep saying, that's just not going to work. The play calling was pretty solid. It was simple enough, but it wasn't overly vanilla. It was a solid play calling day. I mean, it wasn't anything like that were real flashy, but it was good enough to beat who they were playing. Defense only giving up 7 points and making some pretty key stops. That was impressive. Defense called, I think Lambert and company called a good game there. So, I mean, it was another just kind of solid coaching performance. Really, the only complaint I have is the second half production or lack thereof. Coming out of halftime, not scoring hardly anything. That's a bad trend. But other than that, I'm gonna say coaching B+.
Yeah, I gotta think it's because of the lack of utter dominance on offense. Giving up 7 points and completely shutting them out in the second half is something you like to see. You've said it before, 231 yards. It's a great effort. So it is funny to me now that we think that 3 sacks is a down performance for this defense when, at the beginning of the season, we would have been like, hey, 3 sacks is pretty good, And it's just, we've seen a historic stretch for the Herd this last 3 weeks, and I don't know. It's pretty funny. So overall, how about the grade this week against Rice, pushing them to 0-9, gaining bowl eligibility, getting that elusive win in the state of Texas, yada, yada, yada. How do you rate the overall performance?
Yeah, overall B. I mean, this feels like just the ultimate B game. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. So therefore, it's right in between that kind of. I mean, it wasn't average. I would say it's above average game, just because there was a lot of good things out there. Offensively, there were some really good things. Isaiah Green had a really good game. His first game that you could sort of say was great. His first one in a long while. And then you look at Brendan Knox rushing for all the yards he had, 130 yards. Armani Levias had a really good game. Defensively, I mean, only giving up 7 points, getting some pretty good pressure in there. So really there wasn't anything bad as far as their play in this game. I mean, there was some moments here and there that weren't the greatest, but I mean, as an overall grade, I mean, I think B is definitely fair. I mean, but you do have to take into consideration that they were playing a Conference USA bottom dweller, and you would have liked to have seen a blowout, but I just don't think this Marshall team is equipped to blow out many people. And I definitely didn't think that this game was going to be a blowout. But so it kind of, like I said before, when I first started talking a while back, this game kind of went like I expected it to go. I mean, it really wasn't any doubt of who was going to win, but it really wasn't anything that like you should pound your chest about and like, say Marshall's going to win the national championship over or anything like that. So I'm going to say B overall. It was just a solid game. It was what it needed to be. It's what I thought it would be. So just solid. So I'm going to say B.
Yeah, I was one of the ones, if you recall, my score prediction was 42-10, and it wasn't so much that I thought that was going to happen as much as I was hoping that I would see that happen. And had they played any type of aggressive offense whatsoever in the second half, I don't think there's any doubt that the Herd could have gotten to 42 points.
Yeah.
And, they could have, but they didn't. And one more house cleaning thing that I've got to talk about that I kind of went past without mentioning when we were talking about the stats. Armani Levias, the effort, lands him on the PFF College National Offensive Team of the Week, as well as, of course, the Conference USA Team of the Week. So this is the first time in, I think Marshall got somebody, I can't recall who, on the national team either last year or the year before. So that's a pretty fleeting thing, and it's a pretty high accomplishment when it happens. So extra shout out to Armani Levias, just having a great season so far, man. A really, really great season. So what do we know about the Herd now after 9 games, Trace?
Oh, yeah. I think now we know, which I think most people would say they've known this already, but I think now we know that Marshall is having success and the offense goes a lot of times as Brendan Knox goes, because when he's going out there and he's running for 100 yards, 120 yards, 150 yards, or even 200 yards, Marshall's having a ton of success. And other games when he's not rushing for a whole lot, Marshall's not having a lot of success. Because when Isaiah Green you can't always count on him to be the all-world beater, great quarterback that you want to see and Marshall fans are used to seeing over the years. But Knox picks up a lot of that slack whenever Green's playing bad. So I would almost go as far as to say that that Knox is the most important player on Marshall's offense, because he really makes things happen when he's running the ball. And he's having a lot of success on the ground. That opens up everything. And there's no coincidence that a lot of times when Brendan Knox is having a lot of yardage, that helps Isaiah Green, because that they have to honor the run a lot more. So Knox definitely, in my opinion, he kind of makes the Marshall offense go. When if he's going for $150, they're in great shape. But if he's going for 60 yards, they're not in great shape. So hopefully that trend continues against Louisiana Tech. They're going to need him, and they're going to need the whole offense to have a good day. But they're going to really need Knox to go out there and have success. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, I have definitely seen a correlation with the success of Brendan Knox and the success of Isaiah Green.
Oh,
because you're right. When Knox is ripping off big runs or getting the hard yards, it makes it a little bit easier for Isaiah Green to not only have an extra second or two to get a pass off, but also it tends to, for some reason, allow him to run the ball better himself.
Right.
And I don't know. I guess it's because, somebody's biting on the run to Knox, that extra defender's biting on the run or taking an extra step towards Knox and allowing Green to get a little bit of yardage. But here's what I know for the Herd after 9 games. Herd's in first place in Conference USA East. 2 weeks ago, they were not. The Herd is bowl eligible. Last week, they were not. And the season is kind of wrapping up the way a lot of folks were thinking preseason. It's just not perhaps as dominant as they were thinking it would be to this point. But, hey, how many times on this podcast, week in and week out, do we say a win's a win? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're not going to look back and go, man, we only beat Rice 20-7. You're going to look back at that at the end of the season when you're adding up your W's and go, well, that's one in the left-hand column. So it only matters if you lose the ones that you really have to have, and the Herd really has to have one coming up. So I hope they get rested up. I hope they get a great game plan for Louisiana Tech. They come out and put on a really big show on a Friday night game when the crowd should be pretty good. There should be a nice contingency of Herd football alumni there. So let's see if they can get this win over Louisiana Tech and drive home a little closer to maybe hosting a Conference USA title game. All right, there was one more game played this weekend, Trace. The Toppers welcomed in Florida Atlantic to Bowling Green this weekend in a game that was really pivotal for both teams in the Conference USA East Division race. It was basically an elimination game. I mean, not totally, but the loser of this game was going to need a lot of help in order to try to find their way into the conference championship game representing the East. We kind of thought it was two evenly matched teams, and really it was. But the Toppers have just picked the absolute wrong 2 weeks to turn the ball over in excess while not gaining any turnovers. Florida Atlantic gets the win this week, 35-24, and that puts the Toppers behind the 8 ball, just 2 weeks removed from setting alone atop the Conference USA East Division standings and undefeated in conference. In the last 2 weeks, they've lost a heartbreaker to Marshall and lost a game that was very winnable had they taken care of the ball against Florida Atlantic. Now, of course, the two teams above them in the standings own the tiebreaker over Western Kentucky. So they're going to need a lot of help. But each team has 3 conference games left to play. Actually, all 3. Western, Florida Atlantic, and Marshall all have 3 conference games left to play. Western's going to have to win out and hope that both Florida Atlantic and Marshall lose 2 of 3 in order to make their way to the conference championship game. So let's talk about those 4 indicators: yardage, time of possession, first downs, and turnovers. Kind of a mixed bag this week. Actually, you would think that it would have favored Western Kentucky the way it goes up until we get to turnovers. The yardage was almost even, 448 to 444 in favor of Florida Atlantic. Time of possession, Western outpossesses Florida Atlantic by a little over 7 minutes, 33 minutes, 49 seconds to 26 minutes, 11 seconds. And the Toppers get one more first down than Florida Atlantic, 21-20. But once again, turnovers are the name of the game. Western Kentucky 4, Florida Atlantic 0. Toppers led 14-0 after one quarter. It looked like the Big Red Machine was going to roll to a fairly easily victory. And then the second quarter happened, and the wheels kind of came off for Western. 21 unanswered for Florida Atlantic in the second quarter. And it was just kind of more of the same in the second half. They traded blows a little bit, but turnovers late in the game just put the game out of reach. Western just didn't have enough opportunities after turning the ball over late to, get within real striking distance to get the win. Ty Story accounted for all 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, and 1 lost fumble. I know it's disappointing, Steve. I know it's a game that all of us really thought that Western could win, and had these turnovers not happened and led directly to scores, who knows what the score would have been. I mean, it's only an 11-point loss, so these are frustrating. These are frustrating losses. 3 turnovers against Marshall in a game you lose by 3. 4 turnovers against Florida Atlantic in a game you lose by 11. I mean, that tells me that these games were there for the taking had the Toppers taken care of the ball. So talk to me about Florida Atlantic. I got a feeling you're going to echo a lot of what I'm saying, but, I got to hear it from you.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me chime in and start a mini rant on fall weddings. If you are a football fan and you are single and you are listening to this podcast, whenever, if ever you get engaged and get married, you do not have a wedding September through December. Or at least not during your school's one of your home dates. Pick an away game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was unable to attend this game due to the nuptials of a couple of a friend of my wife and myself. So I didn't get to attend. I did get to go tailgating for a little bit, hang out with the Jost and Keys again. Good people as always. Came home for a little bit. I watched, the first quarter, kind of that 14-0 explosion. We jumped out to a big lead, and then the second quarter, it really seemed like the momentum kind of shifted when we had a punt sail over our punt returner's head and end up getting down like inside the 5-yard line. Just kind of, it really flipped the field on us. I know we end up having to punt it back to them before we end up getting the ball back, and then the sack fumble score that led to their first points. It just kind of seemed like that whole sequence really flipped the momentum of the game. Then all of a sudden we're playing catch up from behind. And, as I went back and watched the replay of the game, the sequence in the fourth quarter where we blocked the field goal and then return it, Devin Key returns it down pretty far. And then the very next play, the turnover monster rears its ugly head and Story just floats the ball up into triple coverage. I don't mind taking a shot. I think if I had been there, if I had been watching the flow of the game, I probably would have been like, take a shot on first down. But that's probably not the shot I would have taken, just floating it up. Even though Lucky's been a beast the last couple of weeks. That was just a real bad momentum killer. We kind of had things going our way. Could have methodically worked some time off the clock, got down, at least tied the game, if not taking the lead. And, after they got the ball back, they ended up scoring again. And, the margin of victory was what it was. So like you said, turnovers, are really the most concerning facet of what our team needs to clean up. There for a while early in the season, it was consistency on offense. It was penalties at untimely times, just pushing us back out of field goal range or negating big plays and potential scores. Now it's kind of the, football 101, hold on to the ball, value the ball. You can't score if you're giving it up, and you're really playing catch up if you're giving it back to the other team's offense. So really, just kind of disappointed in how it turned out as far as just that many turnovers and being that close to the game, and feel like we could have easily walked out of there with a victory. So just, like you said, overall just a disappointing game, one that could have been had and was there for the taking, and literally threw it away.
Yeah, what's frustrating is we all knew that the schedule for Western was going to start getting tougher. And what this allows is people to have the argument to say, well, see, they're not as good a team as they were early in the season because now they're playing good teams and they can't win. Well, how many teams are going to win when you turn the ball over 7 times in the last 2 games and aren't forcing any? I mean, not too many teams are going to do that. So that's a cop-out argument to me. This team is not bad. They're just not taking care of the football right now, and that's costing them games. It's literally costing them games. Another reason, that we're probably not seeing as much success as we would have liked to, especially against Florida Atlantic. Topper's only 64 yards rushing as a team. That's not a recipe for success. The last 2 games, this defense, which has been, the bread and butter of this team all season long, has only amassed 2 sacks total in the last 2 games. That's just very uncharacteristic. So I don't know. I mean, like, some things are just going wrong at the wrong time. And unfortunately now it's got Western Kentucky behind the 8 ball trying to, make a final ditch effort to win the East. It's just going to take a lot of work. Bowl eligibility is still very much attainable. Here in a little bit, we're going to preview this game against Arkansas, and Arkansas is absolutely terrible this year. They are absolutely a beatable team. So let's talk about some stats, and then we'll get some grades and we'll move along. So Ty's story, look, completion-wise, yardage-wise, looks great. Turnovers, not so great. 32 of 47 on the day, 380 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like I said before, 3 picks and the 1 lost fumble. That was a scoop and score, so that's just salt in the wound. Gage Walker, leading rusher, 14 carries, 53 yards. One of my points to victory for the Toppers against Florida Atlantic is that Gage Walker was going to have the type of game he was having against Marshall, which was like 12 carries and 100 and some yards. I said he needed to have about double that, 25 carries for hopefully somewhere around a $130, a $140, and it just didn't happen. Lucky Jackson is completely killing it the past couple of weeks. 9 catches this week, another 194 yards and a touchdown. And Jock Sloan, 6 catches, 51 yards, and the other touchdown. Nice to see D'Angelo Malone kind of get back to it after getting held in check most of the Marshall game. 10 tackles this week, 9 of those solo, 1 tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hurries. So that tells you he was close to getting a sack, but he just could not get one in the column. And then Antoine Kincaid, 9 tackles, 6 of those solo, 1 tackle for loss for Antoine, and a pass defended. Corey Munson, good bounce back game, 1 of 1 on field goals, 3 of 3 on extra points. And Haggerty, a great average on punts, 51.4 yards on 5 punts. Some guys had some good days, but, ultimately it's turnovers and they'll kill you. So let's talk about grades. What you got for Mr. Story this week?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if you just looked at his completions and yardage, you think, wow, he had his best game as a topper. But then when you have to factor in the turnovers, it really was a C- kind of game for me. I know in his first couple games he was kind of game manager-ish. He played a lot safer, didn't put balls in areas where it could be a chance for an interception. And I'm glad that the playbook's been opened up. I'm glad he's doing more and finding more guys and getting more comfortable. But there has to be a balance somewhere of opening it up, but still, making the safe play sometimes, the safe check down versus forcing balls into coverage. So I'm going to give him a C-. I'm not going to go to D because still had an overall pretty efficient game. The turnovers are just bad decisions on a few throws. So I'll give him a C-.
Yeah, that's fair. And of course, we're never going to blame any one player because you win as a team, you lose as a team. But accounting for all 4 turnovers, it's just something you can't have. So how about offensively? You get 24 points despite turning the ball over 4 times, and you rack up nearly 450 yards of offense.
Yeah, again, you see improvements. I mean, turnovers are not – the offense is definitely clicking and coming together and doing better things. I was kind of down on Lucky at the beginning of the year. I had made statements that Ja'Cour Pearson was kind of our wide receiver 1. He had been the guy that was most reliable, in my opinion. But, the last couple of weeks, it's been nice to see Lucky turn it around and kind of be the man, that senior leader, and possibly try to put himself in position to play on Sundays. I don't know that he can or will, but he's going to at least have an opportunity to prove himself worthy, and he's doing that right now on the field. But offensively, I'm going to give him a B. Good playmakers are making plays, putting up some yards. Just still want to see more consistency and some more points coming out of the offensive side of the ball, and holding on to it will definitely help that occur.
Lucky Jackson is really making a strong statement for a first-team all-conference selection here lately. Past 2 games, 25 catches, 362 yards, and the 1 touchdown. That's 14.45 yards per catch. That's nothing to sneeze at. I'm glad to see him turning it on late. How about defensively this week?
Yeah, defensively, I'm just going to give them a C. They weren't, ripped and ran over. The first half of the game, they played pretty well. But like you said, they're not having as big an impact as they were kind of in the middle part of the schedule. Games, 3, 4, 5, where they were just really causing havoc and putting a lot of pressure in the backfield. Granted, they still putting pressure, but they're not getting there and finishing it off with good sacks and tackles for loss. So, like you said, we're not pinning this loss on any one person or any one unit on defensive side of the ball or turnovers by any means, but kind of just an average performance for them. So I'll give those guys a C.
Yeah, you also have to factor in that 7 turnovers is 7 extra possessions that these guys are on the field and have to basically come off the field and get right back on the field. So that's going to lend itself to giving up some extra yards. So those numbers do get a little bit skewed, but if they can just settle in and get to the quarterback again, I think we're going to see it turn around. So how about special teams? Good bounce back game for both guys. I didn't really look at you mentioned the punt over the head, but I didn't really look at return yardage or anything like that. So what do you got for special teams?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple decent returns. That one that went over the head and was down inside the 5, that one hurt. It was a low line drive kick, and the return guy was just short. He's shorter than he should have been. But as far as the kickers go, I mean, Munson bounced back, knocked them through the pipes. Haggerty just continues to impress. He's got a good leg on him, doing what he needs to do, having a good average, helping us flip the field, when it comes down to the field position battle. So I'll give those guys a B. Nothing really big stood out to me, but, they had a good game, a good showing.
Yeah, nothing to merit a bad grade, just nothing spectacular, really. How about the coaching effort this week against FAU?
Yeah, I mean, the coaches, I still feel like they had a good game plan, called up good plays, dialed up some deep shots at good times. Just sometimes it has to be up to people to make other reads or better decisions or better throws. So coaching-wise, I'll give them a B as well. Yeah, I think, all around the game plan has been good. And, especially if you look back at the last 2 seasons, it's night and day, the play calling, and just there's not any scratch your head moments going on from, why did we call that? What are we thinking? What are we doing? That's not happening. Definitely can see Helton and staff continuing to improve there and getting more comfortable with the players, and the players getting more comfortable in the system. So I definitely give the coaching staff a B. Thought they've done a good job, even in losing effort. Yeah,
I said the same thing against the Herd. I mean, the game plan was good. It just didn't come out the Toppers' way in the end. So how about overall this week against the FAU?
Yeah, obviously a loss feels like that drags it down a little bit, but it stings because, like you said, like an elimination game, when you've got tiebreakers and you're on the wrong side of them with the people that are ahead of you, even if you win out, you need a lot of help. But still, overall, it didn't feel like a terrible game. It felt like a game that we can learn from our mistakes now, especially when you've done it 2 games in a row, and really grow from it in the first year in the system. And, I remember, coming into the Marshall game with 5 to go, I remember saying, we could easily go 5-0, or, we could go 0-5 or somewhere in the middle of these last 5 games. There's no game we can't win. There's no game we can't lose. So nothing is a given right now. The Arkansas game is going to be tough, even if they are a bad SEC team. But overall, I give the team a B-. I mean, I'm not down on them. I'm not down on the coaching staff or the players at execution. I just definitely see that there's points that we can learn from, and they're going to be in the film room more than anybody, seeing exactly what went wrong and how they can clean it up. So, I'm still optimistic about the team and the season.
Yeah, there's no reason not to be. I mean, there's no way. I just can't see Western going 0-3 the final 3 games of the year. It's just not going to happen. Bowl eligibility is going to be there, so we'll see basically just where they land in the pecking order of Conference USA. You'd like to get to 7 or even 8, but 6 is definitely going to happen. So what do we know about Western Kentucky after 9 games?
I mean, we know that they're still settling into this system. I mean, you see the offense has continued to develop, and going from scoring 16 to 20 points to now they've shown they can be in the mid-20s, up to 30. And the only real thing now holding them back is, playing a clean game, whether it's penalties, whether it's turnovers, just valuing each possession and maximizing it, trying to finish drives. I mean, that's just kind of what we know, and they know that they have to clean up on right now. Is if they want to win and get to bowl eligibility, which at this point is the goal, since the conference championship is likely out of reach, that has to be the next attainable goal. They're going to have to clean up and play a little bit better ball to get that done. I think the defense will continue to do enough and keep them in position to win games. They've done that all season, even though they're not dominating per se as they were earlier in the season. They're still, putting a good showing on the field and keeping the offense in position to go win the game. So I think that's what we know, that there's still room for improvement, and bowl eligibility is still there for the taking if they clean those things up.
Well, you, unlike most of the fan base, was a little bit more realistic when it comes to expectations for 2019. You had said that you saw this Topper team being a 7-5 team, with the ceiling possibly being 8 or maybe 9 if a few things went right. And you're sitting right there in position to get that. So what I know about Western Kentucky after 9 games is that there's still bowl eligibility ahead. You're plus 2 wins from where you were all of last season with still 3 games to go. And a lot of the folks didn't think that 5 wins was really something that was likely this year. So if you look at it that way, then you're playing with house money, right? But I think six wins is for sure on the table. A 7th win, depending on how this Arkansas game goes, is a real possibility, because I do think that there may be a split of the final 2 conference games. I've said for weeks now that I like Western Kentucky to beat Middle Tennessee, but I'm not sure they can get past Southern Miss. That's just how my gut has been feeling. So this Arkansas game really is the 7th potential victory to me, but, and this is a big but, you do not want to be seeking that 6th win in the final game of the year against Middle Tennessee. I will say that. So let's preview, let's switch gears, and we're going to talk about Arkansas, because the Toppers have to go down to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and play this 2-7 Arkansas team. The ESPN Power Index, it likes Arkansas, a 62.5% chance to win. And as we're recording, Arkansas is a minus 1.5 point favorite. So Vegas sees it as potentially just a coin flip. A couple of notes about this Arkansas team. Now, 2-7, you say, yeah, 2-7 SEC team, whatever. I don't think they're that type of 2-7 team. They have lost. Their only wins this year are against Portland State and Colorado State. And they actually took a loss to a G5 school earlier in the season to 4-5 San Jose State. So Arkansas is absolutely beatable. Now, I don't know how well they're going to bring it here. This kind of late season out of conference matchup that all these SEC teams like to do. But, we'll see how it goes. This is the first all-time meeting between these two teams. And, of course, the big storyline here, no pun intended, is the fact that Ty Story transferred from Arkansas and is now, of course, the quarterback at Western Kentucky. So a little bit of a added revenge game potentially for Ty Story. A couple of notes on Arkansas. They're allowing roughly 35 points per game and only scoring about 22. Toppers right there with them. Actually, Arkansas scoring 22.7, Toppers 22.6. They're allowing 443 yards a game on offense. Yeah, some of that's probably skewed because they've played teams like the cream in the SEC, but still. And they're only gaining 355 yards per game. Toppers right at 360. So, if you want to look at statistics, yeah, Western has more than a puncher's chance of going into Fayetteville and winning this game. They clean up the turnovers. They play sound football. They get to the quarterback here and there in situations, and they can absolutely eke out a win or maybe, a double-digit win. So talk to me about Arkansas, the matchup, the game, whatever. This is new territory for the Toppers. So What do you like about this matchup against Arkansas?
Yeah, I mean, from everything I know about Arkansas, and I've not deep dived into them and done research, I just know they're a bottom SEC team. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I mean, we've act for kind of beating those bottom SEC teams, as we beat UK twice when they were down and horrible, and then we beat Vanderbilt a few years ago at Vanderbilt when they weren't very good. So certainly a winnable game. Everything I do know about them is that it's kind of been a dumpster fire in Arkansas from what I hear. Players are just quitting the team left and right. Interestingly enough, I had the chance to talk with Ty Story's wife or significant other before the last game. At the tailgate, she was hanging around, and I was introduced and just talking to her, and they're excited about going back home and seeing a lot of people. But, she just kind of that the team is not very good, kind of in shambles, players quitting. And I think it could be interesting to see Ty get that chance to go back and really have that kind of that revenge game and kind of show them what they're missing. Because I know I don't think he got pinned for anything that occurred last year, because they had a bad team and a bad offensive line last year. And they've juggled, I think, at least 3 quarterbacks this year, kind of similar to what we did last year when Shanley, Duncan, and Eccles kind of all rotated in due to injuries and just inconsistent play. So should be a fun game. SEC team, good, bad, or other, it's still going to be an SEC, caliber team. So I don't expect it to be a pushover victory by any means. But if we can go in and play clean ball, Ty Story can continue to be efficient and put on a little show for his former hometown school. We'd love to obviously walk out there with the victory and bowl eligibility and just kind of Ty Story got the last laugh. I'd love for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice storyline, especially to turn things around after this 2-game skid, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, the first 2-game losing streak of the season. So, it's something that you'd like to nip it now before it turns into 3 games. I'd like to see Ty Story walk away with a little bit of revenge and, kind of definitely drive home that he made the right decision by leaving there and coming to Western Kentucky to play his final season. He's motivated, and he knows more than anyone that he's not been taking care of the ball. So you like to think that would get cleaned up. And look, if Toppers play Topper football, they have, like I said, more than a good chance to win this game, because Arkansas is absolutely, I'm looking at the standings now, they are the worst team in both divisions in the SEC. They're 0-6 in conference. They're 2-7. Vanderbilt is at least won one conference game, and they're only 2-6. So, they're kind of neck and neck with one another. I just got to look real quick. I need to see if Vanderbilt actually beat Arkansas, because that might, okay, they didn't play them, so I don't know who they won. But anyway, let me talk about a few players to look out for this Arkansas team. And you said they're playing multiple quarterbacks. I really didn't know who to write down, so I actually wrote down 2 quarterbacks because their leading passer on the season did not play at all last weekend against Mississippi State. So who knows who we'll actually see. But let's start with quarterback Nick Starkel. He's the leading passer on the season. 6'3", 214-pound junior, 93 out of 169 on the season. Just 1,118 yards, 7 TDs versus 10 interceptions. And like I said, he did not play last week against Mississippi State. Now, the quarterback that did get the most playing time against Mississippi State was quarterback Ben Hicks, who you might see this week against the Tops. 6'1", 217-pound senior, 64 out of 132 on the season, just 736 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They've got a fairly good running back there, Rakeem Boyd, the 6', 213-pound junior, 142 carries, 820 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground this season. That's good for 5.8 yards per carry. A trio of wide receivers, I think as I was looking down the stat leaders for Arkansas, they actually had 4 guys with over 300 yards receiving, but I just jotted down 3. First one is tight end Cheyenne O'Grady. That's a pretty cool name. 6'4", 256-pound senior, 33 catches, 372 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's the leading receiver. Wide receiver Trey Knox, he's a big one, man. 6'5", 205-pound freshman, 27 catches, 366 yards, and 2 touchdowns. One note about him, he's from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I managed to see that, so too bad the Raiders couldn't keep him in town. But when you're 6'5" with SEC talent, it's not surprising you don't want to play for the Blue Raiders. Stab twist. Wide receiver Mike Woods, the 6'1", 203-pound sophomore, 26 catches, 334 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. A lot of guys in the receiving corps can make plays. Couple guys, actually 3 guys defensively. Linebacker Dejon Harris, 6 foot, 245-pound senior. A lot of tackles racked up, 75 total tackles, 36 of those solo and just 1 forced fumble. And then the coolest name on the roster, please tell me this is a nickname, because if it is, ESPN doesn't list his real name, but I had to double check when I wrote it down. Linebacker Bumper Pool. Yes, Bumper Pool. 6'2", 228-pound sophomore. What? 67 tackles, 26 of those solo, and a half a sack on the season. Bumper Pool. I mean, all right. Defensive lineman McTelvin at Bumper Pool. I'm sorry. McTelvin. I don't know how to say his last name. If it's Ajim or Agam, I don't know. 6'3", 300-pound senior, 34 tackles, 17 solo, and 5 sacks from the defensive line position. Arkansas actually has 18 sacks as a team. 13 and a half of those are from 4 guys along the defensive line. Not necessarily, they're not listed as defensive ends, it says defensive line. So I don't know if it's tackles or ends or whatever, but they got some good ones along that defensive line for Arkansas, I guess. So, Steven, what in the heck is the Toppers going to have to do to go down to Fayetteville and get a win against this SEC team?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious point is play clean football. I mean, that's kind of been an echoed sentiment since early in the season, when kind of penalties were the issue and not so much turnovers, and now it's turned into turnovers. So, we definitely have got to win the turnover battle. I mean, if you're giving the ball away 3-4 times and that's leading to points, I mean, you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball when you're an offense that doesn't score a lot of points as it is. So we definitely, need to limit turnovers to, 1 or 2 max. And we need to create a couple ourselves, at least keep that even or win the turnover battle. Then we also need to get the running game going. Part of why it felt like we didn't win against FAU is, they made us kind of one-dimensional. We didn't really establish the run game. Gage Walker only was 50-some-odd yards. So if we become one-dimensional, against a team that might have more talent and better athletes on the field than us, that's going to really increase their chances of just shutting us down and doing what they want with us. So establish the run and let that open up the passing game. Not that will be an easy task by any means. But then I'd also, we've said it before, I would like to see that 30-point barrier. I think we're going to have to sniff around the 30-point barrier to walk out with a win. I don't think it's going to be an offensive shootout by any means. But I surely think that they could score that many points, and to be safe, I'd love to see us get around 30 points and hopefully walk out with a victory.
Well, it sucks that we have to get back to those things that we don't like to use as ways to win the game. But, number one for me is just like no turnovers. And I hate to use those cop-out things, but when you've turned the ball over 7 times in 2 games, you have to say you can't turn the ball over. That's a key to victory. Number 2, to me, when I was looking down the stats of these guys through the receiving corps, absolutely this Topper secondary is going to have to play disciplined football, because they have a lot of guys that can make a lot of plays, and it apparently doesn't matter who the quarterback is. These guys are still making plays. And I don't care who you are, 6'5" is just hard to guard when you're talking about someone at the wide receiver position. Number 3, I think you're going to have to catch Arkansas sleeping a little bit with some creativity. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have to toss out some trick plays. It just means I think we're going to have to run some plays that we, otherwise normally wouldn't. Let's try some things with motions, or let's try some things with something new with maybe play action or something like that. I don't necessarily need to see a flea flicker or a halfback pass or anything like that, because sometimes it works and sometimes it's a turnover, as we've seen, both cases with Western in the past few weeks. Number 4, it's always a team concept with me. I try to have at least one of my points be a team concept, and I wrote down one word, and that word is swagger. And I think the Toppers need to go to Fayetteville with some swagger and realize that they are walking into an opponent's field that they can absolutely beat, and play like you can win. Because this team is not competing for an SEC title. They're not, competing for anything really. The ship has sailed for them on bowl eligibility. So there's no reason to go in there timid or, I can't think of the word I'm trying to come up with, but just play with some daggone swagger and go in there and win a game. So who is your 200 proof player this week against Arkansas?
Yeah, it's probably a repeated banging drum, but I'm definitely going to go with the quarterback. Just for multiple reasons. One, I think we're going to have to put some points on the board to win. 2, he's returning to his former school. And 3, a lot of the turnovers have been on him, have been interceptions or fumbles. So Ty Story going to have to step up. He obviously has a little bit of intel about the team and some of their tendencies and what they like to do. So he's got a little bit of intel for us. But I think he's going to have to step up and kind of go win this game for us. Not all on his shoulders by any means. But I definitely think he can be the catalyst and the person that propels us to a victory, on his shoulders, so to speak.
Well, I picked the same guy, and for the exact same reasons that you said. So you covered the bases well for me. So how about a score prediction this week against Arkansas?
Yeah, again, it's just kind of one of those, which team's going to show up? Are we going to take care of the ball, or are we going to give it up? And it gets an SEC opponent, which is likely to be a little bit more physical than what we've seen this year. It's kind of hard to tell. I guess I'm a sucker. I'm going to pick us to win. I think we absolutely can go win this game. But I think it'll be a close one. I think the line's kind of moved back. I think it opened at Arkansas -2.5. So we've come back a little bit towards us where, kick time, it could be, a pick 'em virtually. But give me WKU 28, Arkansas 24 for a Topper victory.
Well, my heart says Toppers, my brain says Arkansas, and I hate that, but I'm with you as far as the score goes. Just flip-flop it the other way. Give me Arkansas 31-24 because I need to see the Toppers not turn the ball over. For 2 straight weeks, it's been heartbreaking to see them take games out of their own hands by turning the ball over. So I'm just kind of a little timid on it until I can see it go away for 1 week. And unfortunately, I have to go 31-24 Arkansas, with the Toppers looking to gain bowl eligibility against Southern Miss the following week. So prove me wrong. Well, the herd's off this weekend, resting up for Louisiana Tech. Western has got that trip down to Fayetteville to take on SEC squad Arkansas. We'll see if they can get bowl eligible at the hands of the Razorbacks. But until that comes to fruition, let's get out of here this week with some final thoughts. So, Trace, start us off. What you got this week on final thoughts?
Yeah, I just keep looking down the schedule and looking ahead now that Marshall's sitting there at 6-3, 4-1 in a conference, and I'm just trying to think, try to picture all the different scenarios in my head. And really, it can go so many different ways these last 3 games because Marshall's got some gut checks coming up. They have some really tough games that are going to prove whether or not they're legit as far as a conference championship contender. It starts with Louisiana Tech. They're the top team in the West right now, but this is the game where Marshall kind of has to win, not because of the season predicament and the conference title game hosting and all that stuff. They have to win it because they're playing for the 75. Period. Point blank. End of story. Marshall that's a game that you have to win. I mean, even a couple years ago after the Western Kentucky game on the plane crash anniversary game, Doc said, how would you like to be the head coach of a team in a game you can't lose? And in my opinion, this is the game you can't lose. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's bigger than football, Marshall, clearly. And this game is the perfect depiction of that. I mean, yeah, it would be great to win the game because they would remain in first place, and they would have the head-to-head over Louisiana Tech and possibly go on to host the conference title game if things keep falling into place. But when you're playing in a game like that and you're wearing that 75 decal on the helmets and you got the black jerseys and the black pants, you have to play at a different level. You have to play a different game than you're used to playing. And quite frankly, if this game wasn't the plane crash anniversary game, I would be extremely worried about this game. Now, do I think it's going to be an easy game? No, not at all. But at the same time, I feel more confident in Marshall to win this game because it falls on the plane crash anniversary game. Now, this still it's still going to be really tough. I mean, because Louisiana Tech is no joke. They're a really solid team. They have a really good offense, a really good quarterback. But Marshall can't afford to lose this game. I mean, that's going to be a thing that really kind of makes or breaks Doc for a lot of fans. If you lose the plane crash anniversary game, that's just kind of tough. That's just a bad look. But I mean, looking at the last couple games after that, though, I mean, Charlotte's not going to be they're no pushover. I don't think they're a bad team at all. Like you said, I think that could be a really tricky game on the road against a team that can put up points and is capable of scoring. So that's a big one there. Especially with the last home game against FIU, where Marshall could potentially wrap up the East Division. I mean, if they win out, then it's over. But even if they lose one more game, they would really need FAU to lose another game. But looking at FAU's schedule, they have a couple tough games in conference still coming up too. So, but Marshall, they just have to worry about winning themselves, and they really need to win this blackout game. And good Lord, please let Marshall come out of a bye week and not look like garbage. Please, Lord, let it happen. That's a bad trend. Everybody talks about it. I mean, look what happened the last time they had a bye. They lost about 38 points at home to Cincinnati. Embarrassing game. You can't have that again. If you get blown out on this game, fans might bring pitchforks outside of Doc's office. It'd get ugly. So can't happen. They got to play sharp. You got to come out of a bye week better than they're used to coming out in the last couple of years. So let's see it. Do something. I don't want to see that again.
So this is the big bugaboo, I guess. Maybe Doc's in the business right now of checking things off the list that he hasn't been very successful at. You got the win in Texas, and maybe this time it's going to be come out of a bye week against a good team in an important game and get a win. Maybe that's what is coming. But until then, we get a whole another week to speculate. One thing I'm going to say about Louisiana Tech before we get to this game, this could change because obviously they have to play this weekend. They're 7-1, and they are riding a 7-game win streak. So they are hot. They are a hot team. One other thing I'm going to mention is, UAB sitting there right behind them in the second place in the West at 6-2. Louisiana Tech's undefeated in conference. UAB is 3-1 in conference. And guess who has to lock horns the week after Louisiana Tech visits the Herd? That's right.
Oh boy.
It's the Blazers and the Texters, and they might just be looking forward to one another because that game could decide who wins the West. So maybe Marshall, might be able to catch Louisiana Tech slipping just a little bit, but we'll worry about that here in a couple of weeks when we get to preview that game.
Hey, one more quick point I like the point you brought up there about Louisiana Tech. 7-game win streak. The two of Marshall's last 3 wins, FAU and Western Kentucky, they beat both of those teams that came in with 4-game winning streaks. So they played 2 teams that were really hot and they beat them. So hopefully that's a good trend that they could keep going with this game coming up.
Well, Louisiana Tech has to get by North Texas this weekend to keep that win streak alive. And of course that would push it to 8 games, which is really impressive. So we won't put the cart in front of the horse just yet. I'm just saying, as it stands, right now with Herd's bye week, Louisiana Tech's look like they are cruising. So, Steven, what you got for us this week?
Final thoughts. Still kind of ringing the same bell that every game we have left, we can win, we can lose. I don't know how it's going to play out. preseason before we got to our predictions episode, I really had us pegged as a 5-7 win team. I thought that was kind of where we're going to land. And then we did a prediction episode, and after running down the positions and everything, like you said, I actually pegged us as a 7-5 team, and it looked like we were kind of going full steam to that projection and possibly even more until these last two games where it's kind of gotten sloppy. We've just kind of gotten away from playing clean football. There for a while, we were one of the least penalized teams in college football. And we're still not getting penalized a lot, but when you give it up, like you said, you're putting your defense right back on the field. And they can be, the most dominant unit in the world, but they're going to get tired eventually. They're human. So would like to see us play cleaner ball, go get a victory, whether it be this week or, to end the season the next few weeks. But, an SEC victory, even if it's a terrible SEC team, is always going to be a little bit more meaningful than, beating a bottom tier CUSA team. So let's go do it. Let's go get a victory and, kind of get CUSA out of the offer against a P5 this year. I know it would be our first in conference for this season. So let's go do it. Let's get one.
Yeah, we're running out of opportunities. I think UAB's got somebody on the slate and, Arkansas, of course, and Western Kentucky. But we're running out of opportunities to get a win against the Power Five. At this point, I'll take whoever. But I'd like to see Western get to 6 wins. I'm seriously bummed that I'm off of the, I'm back to you got to prove it to me after just 2 weeks. But, man, 7 turnovers in 2 weeks while not gaining any is just got me a little gun shy. So hopefully I'm wrong and the Toppers can gain bowl eligibility this week and come out of Fayetteville with a W and a little momentum heading into Hattiesburg or heading into, you got to go to Hattiesburg, right? Heading into that Southern Miss game. A little pressure off, little exhale, knowing that the 6-win threshold has already been met. So until next week, we're going to get out of here. So until next week, Steve, take us out.
Go Tops.
Trace.
Go Herd.
We will see you next week. That's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.